Hi, and welcome to the Rare Business Podcast. My name is Adrian Swinsko, and I'm a consultant, advisor, researcher, and writer on all things related to customer service and customer experience. Through this podcast, I seek out and interview CEOs, entrepreneurs, business and tech leaders, and leading thinkers about what it takes to build organizations that produce better outcomes for both customers and employees in this fast-moving modern age that we live in. If this is your first time listening to one of these interviews, then welcome, and please do dive into the archives at adrianswinsko.com, as I've now completed over 250 of these interviews in the last few years. If this is not your first time listening, then thank you for returning, and I'll aim to do a good enough job to keep you coming back week after week. Anyway, that's enough from me right now. Let's get into the interview. So welcome to the next edition of the Rare Business Podcast. Today, I am really excited because I have Paul Greenberg, who is the founder and managing principal of 56 Group LLC, an advisory firm focused on customer-facing strategic services, but also an author of a number of books. One which was from a while ago called CRM at the Speed of Light. But he's also got a new book out called The Commonwealth of Self Interest, Business Success Through Customer Engagement. Paul, welcome to the podcast.
Are you kidding? It's my pleasure. I'm really glad I'm here.
Thank you, sir. So, Paul, for the benefit of our listeners and readers, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and also the work that you do?
Well, let's see. I start out by being an ardent New York Yankees fan. That's pretty much the focal point of my entire life. And at the same time, I'm going to be 70 at the end of this year. I run a company called the 56 Group LLC, which is literally 55 less employees than its name implies, right? And I've been focused in on CRM, customer engagement, for a long time, over 2 decades. I've got a nickname in the CRM world they call me the Godfather of CRM, although I actually think that was somebody misinterpreting that, and actually was the grandfather of CRM that they think I am, right? Well, I actually think I'm the oldest guy in the CRM industry. I'm going to be 70. So I've written, well, CRM Speed of Light's been through it's in 9 languages and through 4 editions. It's called the Bible of CRM, in fact. And then again, that's because it's 800 pages and weighs about the same. So I think if you count each of those books as a book, because I rewrote it from scratch each time, I've written 8 books. And the 8th is this new one, which is the Commonwealth of Self Interest that you were talking about briefly earlier. Perfect. So I've been around the block a while. Let's just say that.
Excellent. Well, we bumped into each other a couple of months ago, or last month actually, at Tiger World in Vegas, although we didn't get a chance to speak. And I picked up on the fact that actually you recently brought this new book out called, as you mentioned, The Commonwealth of Self Interest. I mean, and that's why I wanted to talk to you about that, because it's CRM at the Speed of Light. It's been around for a while, and it's gone through major kind of rewriting and editions, but this is a new thing, and it's like a bit broader. I mean, so can you tell me a little bit about the book and give us an idea of its kind of main sort of thesis?
Well, I mean, here's the deal. CRM, of course, has been around for decades, but, and if you go back to earlier days of CRM, all of us had really high hopes for the whole thing, right? We saw it as a lot more than just sort of a technology implementation. We saw it as a philosophy, a strategy, a framework, programs, good for mankind, the works from top to bottom. Unfortunately, that's not the way the market panned out. It's been successful, don't get me wrong. I mean, you're talking about a $47 billion market, or a $40 billion market rather, but it's become pretty much, when somebody says CRM now, they tend to think, oh yeah, technology. Yeah. It's a system we have. It's for marketing and sales and customer service. And then really they think it's for sales, which is just a misdefinition. And ultimately it's operational, right? So that said, that doesn't mean that, human beings don't go on doing what they do, and they don't behave differently each time they do something and interact with someone, and they don't have expectations of interactions, and they don't have expectations of a company that say, okay, well, I think you need to know us in order for me to act on something. You're going to have to know me, and in order for me to sustain my relationship with you, you're going to have to know me. those needs didn't go away. The need for the company to figure out what is it I need to know them, and then how do I respond to what they're demanding and requiring. And that's where you're looking at, when it boils down to what's broadly customer engagement, how we interact with institutions. If it's customer engagement, it's how we interact with businesses, but it's really just overarching engagement, meaning how people interact with other people and institutions, that are made up of people. And what you have to do, especially when that scales to millions of people.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, which is really the big difference, So the book, The Commonwealth of Self Interest, operates from a very straightforward framework in terms of identifying it actually does identify a framework and the strategies and the programs and the culture, which is a big part of the book, the technologies, the systems, and the interactions of customers and and the operational needs. It goes through literally, effectively, it's a handbook on how to actually create what I call a customer engaged culture at a company.
Yeah.
Which is different than a customer centric culture, by the way. So the framework is very simple. It starts from the simplest principle of all, which is, if a customer likes you and continues to like you, they'll continue to do business with you. If they don't, they won't. So ultimately, this is, how do you get a customer to continue to like you without going broke, right? Yeah. And the concept of the Commonwealth of Self Interest itself is really the way to think about it, and this is what that means.
Right.
I happen to love the title. I think I wrote the book just because I thought the title itself was so cool.
I thought you kind of, when I read it, and I was a bit like going, Paul, are you in danger of trying to kind of do something or put yourself up there with Adam Smith?
Well, you know what? Ironically, even though I'm not a Smithian particularly, he did have a few things in there that worked. But actually, that's not where it came from. So you look at it this way, okay? So we got, 7+ billion people on the planet. And ultimately, there's one thing that we all have in common. It's only one, which is we all want to be happy.
Sure.
And on that journey to happiness, we want to be happy, unless we're into S&M, and then we want to be miserable on our journey to happiness.
But in some sort of perverted way, that's their view of happiness.
Exactly right. So now, as long as that happiness doesn't impose on others, which unfortunately things like that do, but as long as that happiness doesn't impose on others, then it's legitimately what we're trying to do throughout our lives is figure out how to get as much control over our journey toward happiness as we can possibly have. Mm-hmm. Can't have 100%, can have a lot. Now, that's what self-interest is. It's not selfishness. It's just self-interest. What do I have to do in my life that makes me happy over my life?
Sure.
All right. Now, here's the thing. If we're looking at it in terms of a business, let's say you're, Citigroup, which has 200 million customers. Each one of those customers, each one of those 200 million are self-interested.
Yeah.
Meaning they want to be happy. Now, here's the thing. Number one, they do not care that the other 199,999,999 customers want to be happy too. They just want to be happy in their relationship to that business, period. Mm-hmm. Now, here's the other thing. If you're a business, you're born with constraints right away. You're born with labor constraints. You're born with time constraints, regulatory constraints, cost constraints, you name it.
Yeah.
Right? You're born with constraints from day one. Now, that means that you can't give everything to each customer, right? You have to figure out what is it that I can do that allows me to impact the most customers in a way that they feel as if I'm valuing them, which will make them happy.
Sure.
And here's the other problem you have. That customer who wants to be happy, aside from not caring about the other 199 million plus customers, doesn't care that you're constrained either, right? So you have to figure out, what is it that I can possibly do? Well, the valuable thing about that is human beings. Well, okay, so one other concept. Businesses have a notion of what they value and what kind of results and outcomes they're looking for, which is, they're looking for profitability, they're looking for revenue growth year over year, looking for, if they're unenlightened, shareholder value, if they're enlightened, stakeholder value, improvements, et cetera, et cetera. But the thing with customers is there's only one thing that they actually value, which is feeling valued.
Yes.
Right. And that's it. Right. It has nothing to do with numbers. It has nothing to do with numbers, levels of discount, the percentages of discount. It has to do with feeling value. It's all based on how they feel. Everything.
But that's okay. I mean, I think that's really interesting but I think what I would say on that is that, don't you think that people kind of get stuck in this idea of like what is value for a customer, and actually don't understand that can be relative and very contextual?
Oh, absolutely. They can continue. They think the number is what's valuable.
Yeah.
Here's a great example. Think of it this way. So let's say you're a customer, right? And you get an email on January 1, 2020, and it says, hey, you are such a great customer. We love you. We're going to give you 20% off on anything in our catalog. And you get this email January, February, March, April, May, and June, and you don't get it July 1. All right, So keep in mind, 20%, right? Because you're so valuable. All right. Now, here's the other scenario. January 1, 2020, you get an email that says, you are a putz, right? We don't like you. We think you suck. You're driving crazy. I'll tell you what, if you shut your mouth, we'll give you 30% off on anything in the catalog. And you get that January, February, March, April, May, and June. And July 1, you don't get it. Now, in instance 1, which was 10% less than instance 2's discount, on July 1, you're still a customer. Of course you are.
Right.
Are you still a customer if you've made it this far on July 1 of 2020 in instance 2 and you got 30% off for shutting up and being a putz? Are you still a customer?
Unlikely.
Of course you're not. It has nothing to do with the number. It has to do with how they made you feel.
Yeah.
Right. And that pretty much drives all business. I don't care what you say. I don't care what your numbers say. I don't care any of that. That's what drives business. How customers feel about you at a given moment. And as you said, it's relative and contextual how they do. So you have to find the Commonwealth part of the title means what is it that you can find among this vast array of customers you have who all have unique interests and ideas that are useful in common, meaning that will help you in common. So for example, you have the traditional data, you have the transactional data, you have the demographic data, all the stuff you've always had prior. Now you have social data. Right? Yeah. You have tons of social data. If you look at all that data, let's say you had enough data to look at for all 200 million, just usually you don't, but let's say you do. You're going to find 167 million people are served probably by 35 things that you could possibly offer them. Mm-hmm. Right? Now, then you look at your constraints and you say, well, those 165 million, we can probably offer 22 of those.
Yeah.
So you offer them. And you offer 22 things. Now, what's interesting is all 165 million are going to make individual choices of those 22. Mm-hmm. I don't know how many actual combinations are there, but technically there are several million combinations maybe. I'm making that up. I have no idea.
I think it's going to be lots.
Right, lots. And then they're going to individually choose some set of those combinations. But you know what they're going to feel, right? They're going to say, wow, these 22, they're all kind of meaningful. And guess what? I'm controlling my choice here, and I'm getting to pick what I want of those. And they're saying, cool, right? And that's the Commonwealth part, meaning there's still enough there given what we have available to us now in terms of data. But then, it gets complex, and there's a lot of things you have to do to really extract the data, identify what it is, anticipate behaviors. I mean, there's all kinds of things like that.
Yeah.
And still allow for the human-to-human kind of interactions.
So let me let's come back to that in a second, because you said a couple of things earlier on which I wanted to ask you about, because you talked about how customer engagement is not customer centricity or experience. Can you explain? I mean, is that right? I mean, is that what you said? And can you explain why you think they're different?
Okay, well, there's two different aspects. Okay, so let's start with the latter first, customer experience and customer engagement. So here's the thing. Customer experience there's sort of two kinds of customer experience, really three, but we'll focus on the big two. The big one, which is the one that we mostly are talking about more times than not, is how a customer feels about a company over time.
Sure.
Okay, and that's, that changes from time to time, but it's how a customer feels about a company over time. The second edition of that is the kind of experiences you can create and they can be consumed. So that would be, Disney, that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Right? So those are different. Those are consumable, they're monetizable, they're, the whole idea of that is to have an impact that creates a feeling of some kind, hopefully joy. Right? Now, on the bigger one of the things that has to be made unutterably clear is that you can't enable how a customer feels about a company over time with technology. You cannot do it. It is not enabling. Now, you can develop technologies that can create consumable experiences. That's what Joe Pine and the experience economy was all about, right? And that is, Adobe does that, better than anybody when it boils down to it. But those are the kind of things that can be done. But you cannot enable how someone feels. Think about it now. Hold the thought there, and let's go to engagement.
Yeah.
My definition of engagement is very straightforward. It's the ongoing interactions between company and customer, offered by the company, chosen by the customer. I already went over a lot of what that is. And obviously, ongoing interactions, it's not engagement unless it's ongoing. And that's a one-off, and that's the end of that. But engagement does require, continuation. Offered by the company is offered within the constraints we discussed. Chosen by the customer is chosen based on what the company has offered, but still giving the customers control over their choice. And that's critical to keeping customers engaged, because ultimately they want to control their journey, like we talked about earlier, toward happiness, and that's part of that. So that's engagement. Now, think about it from there. You can develop technologies to enable. Why?
Yes.
That's what it's a communication system.
Yes,
that's what they are. They're bidirectional communications. What we're talking about. It's why you do have systems of engagement. Have you ever heard of a system of experience?
Yeah, no.
Not exactly. There's no such thing, right?
Well, I mean, what you're talking about is it almost feels a bit like the difference between customer experience almost like popped out of an enhanced sort of idea of what customer service was,
right?
And the thing that struck me about that is like, but we can do service, but we can't do experience,
right?
Because the experience belongs to somebody else.
Exactly. Again, I mean, it's a feeling. Yeah, it's a feeling. That's the thing that people got to get through their thick skulls, man. This is a feeling. It's how people feel. It's like you and I grew up with when we grew up with CRM on that side of the thing. You remember it was all about metrics and benchmarks and KPIs and so on, and it was misstated. Really, I mean, it was. Yes, it was. It did need those. That's a way of, the purpose of metrics is really to measure against something so you can see if you achieved a goal that you're interested in achieving. But the point is how did you feel about that goal? I remember years ago when we were doing that old school kind of journey mapping stuff where you have individual interviews in depth with people. Sure. Someone would say to me like, well, what's a good number of interviews? And I'd say, whatever your company thinks is a good number.
Exactly.
It was nothing a scientific number to prove the validity. You're trying to investigate how someone's feeling about what you're doing, right? So
exactly.
But it's like that. I mean, here's another example. Think of this. So assume you have this company out there and they set a goal to $300 million for the year, and they hit it. And the CEO is ecstatic, and he throws a party at December 31st. The big New Year's Eve party is based on hitting the goal, and he brings out the champagne and throws gold leaf all over the ballroom, and everybody gets bonuses and so on. And then he has to quit because of a personal family matter. So a new CEO comes in, looks at the numbers, says, "We could have done better than that." Right? I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
Right? What did the number mean? The number meant only something to someone. That's it.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's in the end, it's it's just a measure of kind of how much stuff you've sold. It actually means nothing in the end.
Exactly right.
About what it's more about what you get out of it.
Yeah, and it's the same with markets. It's funny. I remember back. I was in politics for 20 some odd years, And I remember one time we were looking at just doing some research on markets, like actual financial markets. And somebody described it to me, which stuck with me forever, as the vector result of millions of decisions in a given day.
Mm-hmm.
But I want you, if you really dissect what he said, think about what that means. Human beings are making decisions based on criteria, and they're doing it pretty much based on, it's an emotional decision, obviously. I think this is a good thing, I'll do this.
Yeah.
I think this is a bad thing, I don't do this. The minute you attach good and bad, you're talking about something emotional because you're judging it, right? And then there's a result of those millions of decisions, right? Yeah. It's a Commonwealth of Self Interest in action, really. So it's always a matter of how you feel and what you think.
Yeah. So going back to the because you've answered, I think you've given me you've answered the question about the engagement and centricity and experience and stuff. I mean, but then I go to the framework, which I love the simplicity of it. The idea of that you say, if customers like you and continue to like you, they'll continue to do business with you, and if they don't, they won't. Simple. Brilliant. And I see the framework, and you start with sort of strategy. And I was like, I was up out of my chair, waving my arms around, because I was like, yay! Because it's a complete bugbear of mine that I think it's one of the biggest obstacles in this space is this lack of strategy, particularly when it comes down to experience or engagement. Because, for example, if I go and ask many an exec or leader in some of these big organizations about what their business or corporate market strategy is, and they'll probably reel off all these numbers and talk in terms of revenue and market share and growth and wallet share and all that type of stuff. And that's fine. However, if you then ask them what their experience strategy is and how it is aligned with and how does it enable their business strategy, then I get faced with a whole bunch of blank stares. And it sort of makes me think, is that the Achilles heel for many organizations, as they just haven't got it quite all knitted together? And that's why we end up with these unconnected, Frankenstein-esque sort of technology stack experiences that are getting built and things aren't hitting their mark, and that the CX space is potentially in danger of going or repeating the same mistakes that have been repeated before in spaces like CRM and other sort of like technological innovations over the kind of years, in that it's a lack of connected sort of thinking. I mean, would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's funny, you and I both deal with a lot of very large technology companies, and several of whom are very tied to customer experience in some way.
Yeah.
You have Oracle and SAP pushing the experience economy now. You have the Adobe, the experience manager, which actually is a builder now, which is quite good. And you have all these companies that are one way or the other are invested in the idea of experience. However, and I'm not singling these guys out. They're actually, all three of them are getting better and better at this. But if you look at a lot of their customers, or you look at a lot of the customers, well, you look at a lot of anybody's customers, really. I mean, meaning B2B customers, large companies. They all talk customer experience, but not a single one of them actually systematically builds a strategy for customer experience or customer engagement at all.
Yeah.
And look, so here would be the difference. Like, if you're truly customer engaged, let's say, and you're building, then your culture has to be focused around that too. And what that means, very specifically, is this. In your DNA, mutual value for you and your customer is just simply part of it. It's not a tactic. It's who you are and what you do, right? And the problem that businesses have with that is that the external pressures on them and internal pressures from management down tend to militate against that idea, because it's ultimately, especially with public companies, but it's ultimately, we have a board that we owe explanations to about how we're doing, either successfully or not.
Yeah.
And that means, as far as they're concerned, it's extracting as much value from our customers as we possibly can without losing them. But that's not the same approach.
No.
So here's a perfect example of the difference. So several years ago, 2013 to be exact, Ryanair had a profit crisis, like a profit warning, two of them actually in 1 year.
Funnily enough, I talked to Michael O'Leary about this.
Oh, okay. Well, then you remember another one of my not terribly most favorite people. But is very clear on strategy and also what they needed to do. Oh no, they are what they are, and to their credit, they don't hide it. But here's what he did. So 2013 profit, board pressure on O'Leary is massive. Said, what are we going to do about it, right? So if you remember that year, he initiated, I can't think what the name of it was, but he initiates a customer-centric program. Mm-hmm. Now, it's customer-centric for them, meaning more than their customers specifically would have expected. So, for example, if you make a reservation and you need to change it, you actually have 24 hours before they charge you rather than charge you immediately for the change.
Yeah.
You can bring mobile devices on the plane. You can have 2 bags on the plane. Things that any other airline you would expect normally. For them, it was a customer-centric program. And it worked. And it worked, too.
Yeah, I remember speaking to Michael O'Leary about this because I wrote a piece about it and in my Forbes column. And the headline was, does Michael O'Leary really care about his customers or is he just being pragmatic? Question mark. And wrote this whole piece about that kind of whole thing. Because they basically were saying that, they were cutting too much and they had profit warnings, and then he basically kind of came out and said, we need to stop pissing our customers off.
Right.
And actually, funnily enough, he wrote me a letter about that and sent it to me. Yeah, he wrote me a letter and said, actually, you do care, and we've learned a hard lesson. And I said, actually, I wrote back to him and said, thank you, Michael. 2 questions. 1, can I quote your letter? And 2, can I interview you for my podcast? And he said yes to both of them. So I ended up having a conversation with him about it. And I actually think that, you're absolutely right. They absolutely know who they are. He said to me, our strategy is completely clear. We are going to be number 1 on price in every market that we're in. And we have to make sure that the service and experience that goes with that value proposition, as it were, matches that and enables that, which means don't piss people off and don't take the piss effectively. So if people want to bring mobile devices on and they want to bring an extra bag and they want to change something, and those are the things that the real pain points, then let's get rid of that. And they built this new kind of website and this mobile app and all that sort of stuff to make everything kind of easier. But it was all completely aligned with number 1 on price in every market that they're in.
Right, which is not customer engaged by any means. No, because basically, here's what I remember his quote. In fact, I quoted in the book, which is, he said, "If I had known being nice to customers would have worked this well, I would have done it much sooner."
Yes,
right, which is an astonishing quote. Again, to his credit, he actually said it out loud.
I mean, he's an incredibly honest man. He talks about. I actually asked him about because he said that I asked him. I said repeatedly, kind of Ryanair is based on a similar sort of model to Southwest Airlines. And I said, you are allegedly went to Southwest and sort of like studied what they did. And he said, yes, studied is probably a stretch of the word. He says, I went and met Herb Kelleher and oh my God, can he drink bourbon? And that's as much sort of like training as we did.
Good for him. Well, good for him. See, my problem with that, all of that, and this is a problem to me, is if the board comes back and says, cut that out, it's costing us too much, he would cut it out.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not truly, there's no DNA. We need to provide mutual value. We have to do what the board needs. And this is the way we'll do. If we have to be customer centric for a while, we will.
Yeah.
Even if it's a long while. Now, if you're actually customer engaged, but what he did was customer centric.
Yes.
But it was tactical.
Yes.
Right. And as you said, pragmatic. It was a pragmatic decision to do it, and he did it. But it wasn't a DNA level action. And so now DNA level action. Let's say, perfect example of a company that's at the DNA level is actually, interestingly enough, the largest Sri Lankan telco which is called Dialogue Axiata, which is an absolutely astounding company whose chief customer officer, Sandra De Zoiza, is an astounding person, right?
Wow.
And so to give you an example, this is a company that says, look, we recognize that we are not just a telephone company, not just a telco, but we are part of Sri Lankans' life and lifestyle. And we have to see ourselves that way in everything we do, in every way we do it. Look, we are a business. We are here to make money as a business. But Sri Lanka is our home, and the people of Sri Lanka are our customers, and they're us. Yeah. So accordingly, they do things like this. Every single day, they measure experience and engagement, do journey mapping and touch points and the works. Every day. Right. It's a daily event. Number two, and this is actually really interesting, they literally have a team whose job is to, with human beings who are actually adjusting the website in real time as customers are traversing it to make it the individual customer's experience more appropriate. And they're actually like physically doing it. Then another thing they do, which is actually the most significant thing, is the amount of research they do into the actual people of Sri Lanka and the efforts of their customer base. So for example, they had done a big survey on customer needs and what they were looking for. And they found they had this extremely large contingent of pregnant mothers to be on their network. So they dug into that group and they said, what is it that is your greatest problems? And interestingly enough, they said, look, a lot of times we just have questions, but in order to get these questions answered, we have to literally go to the doctor.
Yes.
Right? We can't just get them answered. There's no place to go to just get them answered by making a call or anything like that. And, and there's two issues with that in Sri Lanka. Issue one, they're pregnant. It's hard.
Yes.
Right? Number two is the roads aren't very good. Right? So they developed a short code service. And you know how that works, right? Yeah, so a short code service, minimal charge. I'm making up the number, the equivalent of 25 pence, let's say. Uh-huh. So a really small charge. And here's what would happen: you'd send in the short code, but we'd come back and say, Dr. So and so can talk to you on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at these times. Pick a time and day, and they will call you. And then you send back that, and then that day you get a call. They'll answer all your questions. They actually built a team of on-call pediatricians and gynecologists and obstetricians and you name it, like all the baby doctors, related baby doctors, and who would literally answer their questions over the phone.
That's awesome.
They're an amazing company. They also, if you read what they say, what we do is service from the heart, right? That's how we look at ourselves as a company that provides service from the heart, right? There's actually a beautiful quote, which I don't have in front of me, and I also way too old to remember, but around service from the heart. That's customer engaged.
Yeah.
And they're still making money. They actually, AAA bond rated, win awards, the best company in Asia, best telco in Asia, things like that all the time. So
I love that.
Yeah. But see, again, it's not tactical for them. It's DNA level commitment to their customers because it's part of life.
Yeah. So thank you for that. I'm just going to let's kind of just leave that one hanging there because I think that's an incredible example. So back to the book, quick question. Who's the book for and how should they read it? Because it's 400 pages. You said it's a manual. Is it a cover to cover book or is it dip in and dip out?
Well, my writing style is very conversational. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you have one in front of you, but
I do.
Okay, well, look at the acknowledgement.
I know. I've been. It feels like that. It feels like you're almost reading a journal in places, Well,
that's exactly how I write. And also, I'm deliberately, if you'll note in the acknowledgements, acknowledging the gods of comedy and satire.
Yes, indeed.
That's my style. Okay, so I'll put it this way. Best way to read it, the same way that some people read CRM Speed Light, which was literally, the last edition was twice the size of that. Yeah. Read it cover to cover, and they said, you look at some of the Amazon reviews, it said, CRM Speedlight said, it was like having a conversation with Paul, and those were people who I had never met.
Yeah.
So that's how to think about it, right? It's a conversation with me, and it actually can be one too. I give all my info in the introduction. So if you want to actually talk to me, it's there.
Perfect.
And the idea is this, though, but it can be picked up chapter by chapter, meaning if you just have something like, oh, need to look at the operational side of how to do this, take a look. Again, look, this isn't meant to be the be-all and end-all. There's no such thing. There's no such book like that. It's meant to be a good starting point on how to think about customer-engaged company and what to do about it, and literally the ones who have done it well and the ones who haven't done it so well. And at the same time, in creative, give you a sense of a framework and a capability. My books have a tendency to end up being used as textbooks. I mean, this one's too new, but the CRM Speedlight got used by 70 different universities as text, and I didn't write it as a text. So the idea is this: pick it up if you're interested in building customer engaged culture. Pick it up if you're interested in having a chat with me. Pick it up if you're interested in just at leisure figuring out one thing or another about CRM, about customer engagement, and pick it up. Otherwise, don't pick it up.
Paul, I'm just going to stop you there and just going to say, for everybody that's listening to this, pick it up, full stop. That's it. Because I've seen it. And that's the kind of the piece of advice I'm going to give to everybody here, because I've seen it, and I'm sort of like, I've dipped in and out of it and kind of gone through, because I had to kind of prepare, for this. So I haven't kind of read it cover to cover as yet, but I will. But I know that we're both a bit pressed for time, but there's a couple of quick questions I wanted to do, which is a bit like, I've got this piece of ongoing social research that I'm doing, because it's based on this new book that I've just kind of published about a few weeks ago called Punk CX. And I'm starting to ask people for a couple of things, just as a piece of ongoing research, is that what one or two words would you use to describe a punk approach to customer experience?
Empowered happiness.
Empowered happiness. I like it. And if I was to say, what company or brand do you think epitomizes a punk CX or a punk approach to CX?
Whoa!
I think that company in Sri Lanka probably gets there.
They're one. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to think of someone else that would. You know what? Who? Even though I'm much more of a baseball and football fan.
Yeah.
Major League Soccer in the U.S., MLS.
Okay. Nice.
They do the coolest things I've ever seen when it comes to engagement. They FIFA, the game, the EA Sports game. So they have a deal with FIFA, and the data that FIFA gathers while someone's playing a game and the data they gather at the stadiums is interchanged, so that the experience at the stadium is better and the experience in the game is better, player by player.
Awesome. Paul, cool. Just cool. I mean, we could go on for hours. Just want to say quickly before we can finish up, thank you so much for spending some time with me today. Congratulations on the book. I'll make sure that I get all that linked up and let you know when it all goes out. Just thanks again for spending some time with us today.
Are you kidding? Thank you so much for having me. You are a legend, sir.
Well, that's it for another interview. I really hope you enjoyed it. Now, every time I complete one of these interviews, I learn something new, and I try and incorporate that new learning into my writing, my speaking, my workshops, and the consulting that I do for my clients. If you're interested, you can find out more about how I work with clients over at adrianswinsko.com. But one final thing before I go, please consider heading over to iTunes or whichever podcast platform you choose to use, and do leave a review. Every little helps, as they say. Anyway, that's all for now. Thank you for listening, and do listen in again. All the very best.